Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to the MLS Power Rankings show. Andrew Wiebe, Matt Doyle, as always, live on Twitter Spaces at 2 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays to pick the top 10 teams that we care about, we're interested in, the guests we want to talk to. We'll get to those in just 1 second, but a reminder for you, if you're listening live, if you're on the podcast side, you already know this. The MLS Today podcast feed has content 7 days a week for you. You're already getting extra time on Mondays and Thursdays. You're getting the call-up on Wednesdays, but Monday through Sunday, the MLS Today podcast feed has all the MLS Today shows hosted by David Goss, as well as the Power Rankings show, this show on Tuesdays, and then the MLS After Dark shows on Saturday and Sunday. So if you're not subscribed to that, if you're not checking out those podcasts, please go do so. It's a great way to fill your day with MLS talk and special guests from all around the league. And we're happy to have on this show a absolutely crack lineup. Michael Singh talking Toronto FC, Eric Krakauer on Charlotte, Jeff Rueter on Minnesota, Felipe Cardenas on Atlanta, Laurel Pfahler on FC Cincinnati, Chris Bills on Austin, Buzz Carrick, the legend, on Dallas, Tom Bogert on the Red Bulls, Patrice Bernier on Montreal, and last but not least, Steve Zakuani on the Seattle Sounders. And we start with number 28 in these power rankings from Week 10. Join us, Michael Singh of the Parlay. Oh boy, man, there's some work to do. This was an unlucky weekend. Unlucky might be a kind way to put it for what I think was an incorrect call on the refereeing side. But man, what's going on with Toronto these days?
Hey, what's going on, Wiebe, Doyle? Yeah, getting right into it. I mean, it's been a rough stretch after a really positive start for TFC, considering where their roster is at this part of the year. And I think they really raised expectations after their four-game unbeaten run, where they take on the defending MLS Cup champions and beat them 2-1 at home, and follow that up with another impressive victory against the Philadelphia Union. And then you look ahead at their schedule and you see, teams like FC Cincinnati twice and the Vancouver Whitecaps, who were struggling before facing Toronto FC. And fans got excited. I got excited about the prospect of where this team could be in just after a couple months of the season. But then, the reality hit, and so did a lot of different things for TFC, including injuries and health and safety protocols to 8 of their first team regulars for these past 2 matches. So they were playing shorthanded already. And then you add in the fact that they're missing 8 first team regulars. They had 4 kids from TFC2 on the bench. And it was always going to be a really, really tall mountain to sort of overcome this week. Not to mention they had 3 games in 8 days, 2 of those being away matches, the last one being across the country to Vancouver. And a really, really tall task for them to overcome. And obviously they came up on the short end, losing now 4 in a row, and they've fallen back down to earth. And I'd say probably in the place where many people predicted them to be at the first half of this season.
Michael, so covering the injuries, covering the health and safety protocols, that's the off-field stuff as to like what's going wrong with Toronto. But there's still a team that you could throw out on the field and expect to execute to a decent degree. So with that understanding, like, where are they not executing? What is the issue for this team right now? Can you put your finger on one particular thing?
I mean, the back line is still very much a question, but then, I go back to what I stated there, Doyle, and that's the fact that they're missing the 4 players that played on their back line the last 2 matches were 4 substitutes or 4 second choice guys. So definitely defensively, they've allowed the most goals in the Eastern Conference through these first 11 games so far, second most in the league overall. So definitely defensively, I think, is probably their biggest issue still. And then it's supporting their guys up top with Alejandro Pozuelo and Jesus Jimenez, both of whom have had actually pretty strong starts to the year. Jimenez in particular, I believe he's still tied for the league lead in goals, and that's saying something with sort of this Toronto FC team. So if I had to identify 2 issues that they're probably not thrilled with, it's the fact they still haven't kept a clean sheet this year, and they're not really supporting those 2 guys up top. So that's what I'd say. But then again, I'm going to go back and say I don't really necessarily believe they're. I think Bob Bradley, what he's been able to do is get the best out of some of these guys and a lot of these guys. And I have to give credit to him because I don't necessarily believe that this team the way it's constructed, should be competing right now.
So what happens in the summer here? How do they get to a point where they can compete? You don't go sign Lorenzo Insigne for the numbers they did. You don't go get Bob Bradley to say, oh, we can't compete. How do they get there? How does he do it? What's Bob saying?
It's multiple acquisitions, Wiebe, and they're coming. And it's not just going to be a name here too. It's going to be a name that excites the fan base, and a couple of names. So you add in Lorenzo Insigne, and then you add in a couple more pieces to that mix. And I think with what TFC is doing right now, which is playing a bunch of their young players, giving them that experience, they're going to be a deep squad in the summer. Now they've accumulated a ton of salary cap space because they had 18 bodies departing the club. Only 10 came in. They sold Ricky Larea for $1 million overseas, trading Mark Delgado, of course, to LA Galaxy for some allocation money. They've built up a lot of resources here to sort of make this team into a good team in 2022. I still believe they'll get there because Bob Bradley right now, he's laying that foundation. When you watch this team play, I mean, Sunday, I'd objectively say they deserve to win that match, where you consider the missed penalty and obviously the botched no goal call. They're finding a way to surprise, at least I'm surprised, that they're competing with so many young players in the lineup, and that's because of sort of the values that Bradley has instilled here. So you take those values and then you add 3-4 more notable names into the mix, including Lorenzo Insigne, who by himself could potentially be a game changer. I mean, you're looking at a real dark horse here come the summer, but the big question is, with 7 games between now and then, how big will that hole be by the time they get to the summer?
Very glass half full from Michael right here.
Yeah, hey,
very glass half full.
28th in these power rankings, but not 28th in the standings. Look, in the Eastern Conference, it's all wide open. Toronto FC have 11 points. Atlanta, 7th spot, just into the playoffs, have 14. So there's all to play for. Bob laying a foundation. Sounds like they're going to build a house on top of the foundation. We know the front door. That's Lorenzo Insigne. I don't know if this metaphor is working at all for anybody, but we had a great time chatting with you, Michael Singh. We're trying to keep it moving on this show, but that is some great insight on what's going on in the six. We appreciate you, man. Everybody check him out on Twitter and go check out his work at the Parlay. All right, let's keep it going. Charlotte is up next in this Week 10 Power Ranking show. They're at 21, up a spot from 22. Eric Krakauer, you hear him on the broadcast, the play-by-play guy for Charlotte. Eric, what's up, man?
All good. Thanks for inviting me on.
Of course. Give me the vibe check in Charlotte right now. Nice opening goal for Andre Shinashiki. Was happy to see that. A player who needed an opportunity, got the goal, and a big win at home for Charlotte.
Yeah, there's a lot of positivity about this place. Obviously, because of the record at home, the 4 wins strung together. But even the troubles away from home haven't really dampened the spirit of this city and the supporters. And I think part of that is because we're still very much in the honeymoon period of this inaugural season.
The honeymoon period has seen a lot of good moments at home. A lot of that has come from this team's ability to defend, frankly. And we, there were questions about that, especially after the last couple of games of preseason. What has gone right for Miguel Angel Ramirez in terms of how he has built this team's defense? Like, what are we seeing every weekend from this Charlotte team?
Well, I think it starts with consistency, right? And sometimes that's hard to come by when you have to chop and change the back line, which has happened recently. Fuchs, for example, Christian Fuchs has had to play center back, left back because Mora was out for a while. Charlotte has lost Adam Armour for the season. I thought he was going to play somewhat of a role. Makunis come in and out of that lineup, but it's been consistency in terms of performances. I think a lot of credit also goes to the guy who's protecting or shielding that back line, and that's Brant Bronico, who for me has been one of the standout midfielders this season. He's playing to a level that I didn't even know he could. But again, one of the big factors that answers your question as well, Doyle, is that when they play at home, they're just much better on the ball. And when they have more of the ball, they have to do less defending. Interestingly enough, though, and it must be said, there were some moments in the game against Inter Miami where perhaps they should have conceded were it not for Kalina. And he's another key piece. I would argue that he is probably the first or second best goalkeeper so far this season, maybe third. And he's been outstanding.
Come on, Eric. Come on.
I mean, you disagree?
I do.
I can think of two names. I can think of two names off the top of my head who perhaps you could put ahead: Blake and the kid in Minnesota who's been just out of his mind.
All right. Well, I will agree that those two guys have been ahead. I do agree that Kalina has been pretty good. Top three, it seems like a stretch. But let me ask you this. You mentioned the home road divide with this team in terms of not just the results, but how they play. And has and we see that I think throughout the league for the most part. It's pretty well known that MLS has the most significant home field advantage in basically all of top division soccer around the world. There are a lot of reasons for it, or a lot of theories for it, I should say. Nobody's really put their finger on the exact reason yet. But is that something that Miguel Angel Ramirez has talked about in terms of mentality, in terms of approach? Are they just consciously saying, you know what, we're going to sit deeper when we go on the road, we're going to try to play a little bit more against the ball? Or is it something that's just kind of happening?
Well, I actually asked him that question directly yesterday. I said, take away the supporters, which he has, acknowledged time and again, insofar as the role that they play. He says that they're the fuel when the legs are losing some gas. He came up with this metaphor saying that, the players are still babies away from home and they're growing together. The suggestion that playing on the road is more difficult for a variety of reasons, which he didn't touch on. I think the fans at home are the number one reason. I mean, the atmosphere at Bank of America Stadium is pretty incredible. I know that David Goss went there recently because I heard the podcast with you guys after that, and he was impressed. But there must be something about confidence going into away games because their approach is more aggressive at home right from the go. And they maintain that aggression throughout the game, even if they make mistakes. Whereas a perfect example of the opposite is if you look at the game in Orlando, where the first 10 to 15 minutes were very positive from Charlotte. But as soon as Orlando had a real clear-cut chance, they just kind of buckled a little bit and never were able to regain momentum. So it could be a mental thing. Another factor at home could be the turf. That could play a part as well. But ultimately, I think everybody believes that it's the fans in the stands who are making the difference. They're the ones who are helping galvanize this team.
So right now at home, real good. Away, not so good on the results front. Probably got to fix that to get over the line in year one. But right now, Open Cup time, Wednesday night in Richmond. I love it. I love that Charlotte's going on the road. I want more MLS teams to go on the road in this stage of the tournament. We have seen a couple. What do you think this tournament means to this club?
Well, I asked that too. I asked Miguel if he felt pressure going into this game. His response was that there's pressure in every game. So, take that as you will. I think that if you ask people in the front office, they want a deep run in this tournament. They probably believe that this is their best chance at getting silverware. Anything can happen in the U.S. Open Cup. I definitely believe that they expect to win tomorrow, and that no other result will be accepted. But there's no question that they want to get into the playoffs, and that is their priority.
All right, we got Richmond, Charlotte on Wednesday, City Stadium in Richmond, ESPN Plus. I heard there's a whip around show from the boys from Football Americas. I just want to throw it out there. Real quick, because I was listening to the back and forth. I went to American Soccer Analysis. I just wanted to look up the goals minus XG. That's generally how we judge the underlying numbers on goalkeepers. Kalina is 11th in MLS right now. Just throwing it out there. That's just a stat. It's just context for anybody. But he's been very, very good this year, and no doubt about it, he saved the result for them against Inter Miami. Eric, thank you for coming on, for mastering the Twitter Spaces interface for us. We appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's keep it going on this Power Ranking show. We're going to Jeff Rueter, and we're going to Minnesota United. Jeff, we did not get this question asked to you on the last show, but I wanted to because I have to prep for All-Star. What is my number one late night, perhaps drunk food in Minnesota?
Man, it's not a Juicy Lucy. I know everyone's going to tell you it's a Juicy Lucy. When you're drunk, you don't necessarily want like a half pound of beef and a bunch of molten cheese inside. That's
a little messy too,
Little bit. Yeah. I mean, like, there's a beautiful patio called Sweeney's. They've got some awesome apps. If you want some wings, if you want some great fries, some nachos, whatever, sit outside. That's probably the right vibe. That's only about a mile and a half away from the stadium. Man, you've got my number. Just text me. I'll give you the Rex.
There we go. We don't want to give away the good stuff. We want to make sure we have a seat out there. Exactly. Everybody needs Juicy Lucy's. That's what you should be focused on. All right.
Wait. There's a restaurant that opened up a mile away from me within the last couple of months called Juicy Lucy. And I haven't gone yet. Should I have to go now, right? Like
you have to go. Yeah.
Just apparently not when I'm drunk.
It might. Well, yeah. You'll thank me later, man. It's just like before 8, eat a Juicy Lucy. After that, depending if you're on the sauce or not, your mileage may vary.
You're going to sleep. All right. Well, the vibes on this conversation are better than the vibes for Minnesota recently. So the form guide on them is really up and down. 2 draws, 2 wins, 2 losses, 2 wins, 2 losses. We're in the 2-loss variety here, and the most recent was at home to a last-second FC Cincinnati goal by Brandon Vasquez. What's going on with Minnesota? Can you put your finger on what this team is right now?
Yeah, it's. I think it is the most they are who they are team in Major League Soccer this season. Shout out to Colin Solberg, a friend of mine who had tweeted that yesterday, and I think it's the perfect way to encapsulate that. I think you brought me on last year, and every single week I'd say this is the Loons team that we've known since 2020. Well, this is the Loons team that we've known since 2020. If Reynoso is able to find his spaces, if he's able to create his chances, if he's able to find his passing lanes, they are dangerous. If his runners are able to get into dangerous areas, they're able to create out wide. If they're not, then they're running centrally, and then they're running into a brick wall. And their strikers aren't finishing their chances. That's it. That's the list. I mean, that they're going to be defensively fine. They're going to keep you in every single game, which is all you can ask for. It's weird to think that now for over half of their MLS existence, they've been defensively competent after how incompetent they were in the first 2. But if you just look at the results, if you look at their creativity, they don't really have a second facilitator. I think they looked at Franco Fragapane as being that Kevin Molino replacement after Hot Boy went on that hot run in the 2020 playoffs, and Fragapane looked really good last year, hasn't looked good at all this year. Their best attacker has probably been Bongi Hlongwane, their new signing from South Africa, but he's not given starts. He's being treated as kind of a spark plug off the bench, and he's looked good. His pressing has been really sharp. There is the home game against home for Minnesota anyway, against the Chicago Fire in late April, where he set up an assist purely by badgering the Chicago Fire back line, got a turnover, picked up the turnover, and moved on. So, it's exactly what we've seen before, and I think that the end result is teams know what they're expecting. Teams know what they're after. Teams know what they're about. They've played in a 4-2-3-1, I think, every single game except maybe one this season, which they've done since 2017. And the scouting report on Minnesota couldn't be more padded and probably more true to life for other teams than any other team in the league. Man,
the striker situation it strikes me as strange, given the amount of investment, given the guys, especially in Amaria's case, that the gaffer brought back. That he said, no, that was my guy. We lost him. He should have had all these goals. Here's the guy I want, and it's just not working. Why isn't it working? Who's he going to end up with, do you think? And is this is the hand he's dealt? He's dealt himself, really, and now he's got to make it work.
Yeah, they've got to make it work. And I think that people forget, like, Amaria was the guy that Minnesota wanted heading into 2020, but he was the guy before Reynoso was there. And so there's a part of this where it feels a little bit like a nostalgic, this is a player that we liked independent from who we are now, and now we have a chance to bring him in. But it just isn't working. They don't have that sort of rapport. They haven't built that sort of connection you want from a 9 and a 10. And then keep in mind, he's not even the highest earning striker on the roster. And so you also have this really imbalanced budget, but also uses of resources, where you have a backup striker who I think Adrian Unu has 24 minutes heading into his last game, where he started and was subbed off before the 60th. It's just not working. It's lopsided. They're also very different types of players, and so suddenly you're completely changing how you want your front four to operate once you change one end for the other. And in the first 10 games of the season, Adrian Heath has actually not even been going with Unu off the bench as their backup striker. It's been Abuda and Lodi more often. So as for Amaria, I mean, he's been a player who can kind of do a little bit of everything. maybe not hold up play so much, but through 6 seasons in MLS now, Minnesota United has had a different profile of striker leading the line every single season compared to the season beforehand. And I don't quite understand the complete lack of continuity. It feels like a team that doesn't know what they want out of that position. And I think that's pretty evident based on how the team's playing.
So let me ask you this then. I guess I'm going to ask 2 questions. Is there a chance that we see a formation shift? Like if the wingers aren't producing, so it's going to be a 4-2-3-1 no matter what?
They've had 6 years to do this, man. I mean, like they're not like, sure, 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1.
I'm thinking maybe like a 3-5-2 with Reynoso underneath 2 strikers, because Lod is the only one who has been good, I think, and he's probably at home as a second striker more so than he would be as a false 9. So you could pair him with Amaria or him with Huno or and like let those guys go with Reynoso as that classic RG number 10. So there's no chance of that, whether it's a 4-3-1-2 or a 3-5-2 or 3-4-1-2, no chance of that.
Well, the 3-man, 5-man back line on paper makes the most sense, right? I think it gets the most talent on the field. I think it gets the most out of the players in the attacking third. The hard part is this team is allergic to defensive depth. I wasn't surprised to see them make a trade at the end of the window. I was very surprised to see that it was Chase Gasper going instead of Tyler Miller. Because I think that it looked like goalkeeper was settled. Everyone in the league knew that Minnesota had 2 starting goalkeepers. They were sitting on one who was just on the bench. It was going to be a prime way for them to get some allocation money to start building ahead of the summer. Instead, they trade Chase Gasper, who dropped out of the lineup for personal reasons, very good reasons. It's good to see that he's taking care of himself with substance abuse issues. They brought in Kamar Lawrence, known MLS entity. But this team has a habit of just trading away its defensive depth. And so if you're looking at pull off a 3-5-2 or a 3 pick your numbers up at front of the 3, the issue becomes that I don't think that they really have 5 starting trusted defenders anymore. I don't think that they do. Brent Coleman's jumped in and out of the lineup ever since the team went to Major League Soccer in 2017. But he hasn't been given that consistent run out when Bakaida Bassi and...
Okay, Jeff, I'm going to interrupt because we're coming up against it time-wise here. Real quick, at what point does Adrian Heath, I don't want to say his seat get warm, but at what point does he start losing some of the decision-making power in terms of these signings, in terms of, he's not technically the GM, but we all know who's doing the shopping. Real quick.
Right. Yeah, it's very tough to say. It's tough to do that mid-season because, you would have to have a coach who's both saying, yes, I'm going to take care of the on-field product, but also, yes, I'm going to lose part of my job titles. I don't think we've really seen that Major League Soccer short of Mark Dos Santos in his first year with Vancouver. I think that's something that would have to be an off-season. Frankly, they probably missed their window to do something like that. That sort of consolidating of the hierarchy, that probably should have been done over the winter.
You've got Minnesota hosting Colorado Rapids in the Open Cup on Wednesday. We'll see how seriously they take that. Another front open for trophies. Drunk food with Jeff Rueter, as well as Minnesota United. I will see you in Minnesota this summer, gentle sir. All right. I will buy you multiple beers. I will guarantee that right now, Jeff. All right, Felipe Cardenas, let's keep the athletic rolling here. We're talking Atlanta United. It's positive at number 12. They're up 6 spots from 18. That's because they put a whooping on the Chicago Fire. It is more, I think, negative probably, Felipe, just because of the context within that win, which is Miles Robinson going down with what you'd have to expect is a season-ending World Cup-ending injury. How are the vibes around this team right now? I mean, Brooks Lennon said it was a really tough moment for everybody involved.
Yeah, I feel like the last time I was on the Power Ranking show, you asked me the same question to start.
The Guzan, man. Yeah.
The Guzan. It was the same thing, the same situation, the same dark cloud. And this one feels, I think we can all agree, Brad Guzan, tremendous professional, World Cup veteran for the U.S., but everyone wanted to see Miles Robinson get that chance, and I think here locally, he's really grown into a player that's very well liked. He's pretty shy in front of the cameras, but you can see his personality every day in training, and he became the most important player at the club. With Joseph injured, Ozzy Alonso injured for the season, Brad Guzan injured for the season. Miles Robinson, the quiet leader, gets the armband, and suddenly he was the guy that was holding up the club, each week, each game. And so, Alex DeJohn yesterday told reporters that the 4-1 win over Chicago was, quote, an expensive win. And that's how I saw it. I was watching that game and I was completely distracted by it, because I was thinking about, what does this mean for Miles Robinson's career? What does this mean for the U.S. men's national team in Qatar? And how does, Gonzalo Pineda, now with a very legitimate emergency and injury crisis, really right the ship with a lot of games to go?
Is it Alex DeJohn? Is it George Campbell? Or is it inevitable that this team makes a move when the window opens in a couple of months for another center back?
Well, I'm going to file a story today. Like, I might as well just read you guys my draft. Guys, you guys are asking me every question. But it's Alex DeJohn tomorrow against Nashville because George Campbell is still nursing a groin injury. Yesterday, Gonzalo Pineda told reporters that he's close. George Campbell's close, the homegrown 20-year-old, who is the future of the back line. And I think there was a lot of hope for a Miles Robinson, George Campbell center back pairing, as Alan Franco was still struggling to get his fitness right, struggling with his performances, to be consistent. And then George Campbell gets injured. So Alex DeJohn is the guy tomorrow night alongside Alan Franco. And to your point, yes, I think this puts a lot more pressure on Carlos Bocanegra, the technical director, to not just sign players that strengthen the team. Like, now he has to sign players, find players that fill holes and avoid this team this season from being not a disaster, but I think clearly the standards, the expectations have changed. And so the summer window is going to be a big one. I think we all know the club is watching Matthew Hoppe. That would be a U22 slot, which is open. But those key positions now, center back, goalkeeper, and defensive center mid, which that is the spine of your team. That is how teams win in every league in the world. He has to figure that one out.
Let me ask you this, Wiebe, because it does look like Carlos Bocanegra has made one emergency season-changing signing already this year. He definitely got it right with Ronaldo Cisneros, player of the week, hat trick in the first half, 36 minutes, scored 3 goals, 3 different kinds of ways. He has fit because, in my opinion, he doesn't care about having the ball. He just wants to run and find space. And with the guys behind him, Almada has been, I think, very good the past few weeks. Moreno, I think, probably had one of his better games of the season. And Araujo definitely changes that attack. But he fits in well. He scores goals. He is here on loan. There is, from what I understand, I think maybe what you reported, an option to buy. Do we know what that number is on the option to buy? And do we know whether Atlanta intends to use, even if Joseph comes back fully healthy, do they intend to use that option?
Yeah, well, personally, I don't know what the numbers look like, but yesterday when I was at training, just talking to colleagues, I'm like, well, they're going to have to buy that player. I mean, they're going to have to make that deal, that loan deal finalized, make him a contract. And because he's been the only backup striker in the history of Atlanta United that has shown the ability to score when Joseph Martinez isn't on the field. And so, listen, like during the weeks when he was in camp, he had just arrived, I thought even Gonzalo Pineda was sort of embellished his speed. And I don't think he's the fastest player, but he, to your point, Matt, he just moves well. He just gets the game. He understands where he has to be. He's very opportunistic. Ronaldo Cisneros, to me, just wants to be on the team. Like, he's showing like an attitude that I think this team really needs, like a certain edge that's unselfish at times. But the bottom line is, yes, I that's why I tweeted yesterday. I questioned the signing because they spotted him during the same trial where they signed Dom Dwyer. And when you looked at Ronaldo Cisneros' numbers, he was not prolific at all since he started playing professionally. The pedigree is there, though, coming from the Santos Laguna academy, getting time with Chivas, but he's just not a goal scorer, a consistent goal scorer. He hasn't been given those opportunities. And maybe that's what Carlos Bocanegra saw. He's made those types of signings before, players that just need a chance. And so I think if I had to make a bet, I would bet that he would be signed, because Atlanta just needs someone that if Joseph can't go, they know what they're getting and they know what they're going to get out of Ronaldo Cisneros.
You said that expectations have to change, Felipe. So I want you to help us define quickly what those expectations should be for the rest of this year for Atlanta United, and also who the pressure falls on the field to replace, as we've repeated in so many different places, the spine, like the guys that were expected to bear that pressure. Who is that? Whose shoulders now have extra weight, and what are the expectations?
Well, I mean, I think if you're first of all, for Gonzalo Pineda being a first year head coach, last year was his first year, but it was half a season. This is obviously his first full season, and he's trying to build something. And so remember, this club was reset. The players are different. So many coaching changes. I think it's still a team that's looking to just find some sort of a sustainable winning mentality. The continuity has not been there. So all those things are part of the rebuild. With the injuries to Guzan, Miles Robinson, Ozzie Alonso, and Joseph Martinez, who's back. I saw him on the pitch yesterday, just having a meeting, but he's looking fitter. He's running. I think you've got to give Gonzalo Pineda a little bit of space, some room, and some margin for error. And for me, even when they were healthy, they weren't playing like an MLS Cup contender. And so now, for me, it's like they just need to stay in the playoff hunt. Fight for that fourth position, fight for a home playoff spot, because that changes everything for Atlanta when they're at home. They played well against Chicago. I agree with Doyle. Marcelino Moreno, who has, to me, is just, he's a total enigma. He can be very good or he can be not bad, but just you're not sure what he's doing. He's not a system player. And against Chicago, he was strictly a 1-2 touch player, and it looked great. It made everything work. And so if he can play that way, then Atlanta can cruise, they can get a rhythm. But they're still not a team that kills teams, that puts teams away. And so I think the expectation should be that. What is this team going to build towards towards the end of the season? Not so much, are they a contender? I think they just need to fight for a home playoff spot.
All right. Atlanta United. It's devastating for everybody that cares about the USMNT, as well as for Miles Robinson, more pertinently so. But we hope to see him back and healthy, and we'll follow all the coverage from Felipe in market in Atlanta. Thank you, Felipe. I always enjoy talking to you.
Anytime. Listen, Wiebe, when you're in Atlanta, or if I'm in New York, you buy me all the beers as well, but I'll pass on the champagne.
Okay, well, no, I've got it figured out, man. I'm telling you this. I've solved the problem, so to speak. No,
wear goggles.
I'm in Kansas City. By the way. So if Atlanta come here, that's where I'll be to buy you some beers. All right, let's keep it rolling to number 11 from 12 to 11. Laurel Pfahler, Queen City Press. Go check her out. Nobody covers FC Cincinnati the way that she does. Laurel, the vibes are good. Up 8 spots to 11, a win on the road, laid on. Doyle is writing about this team as if, if they just keep it up, this is a shoe-in playoff team. The key, if they keep it up, this has got to be a little different for you.
It's completely different. It's wonderful, I've got to say. I mean, we've been through a lot here in Cincinnati, so it's nice to see really it's nice to see the fans enjoying it again. You could just feel it last week, the home game against Toronto. Just a different energy about them. And it was a smaller crowd for a midweek game. So for them to have that kind of energy for that game, it was nice to see.
Give me what you see as far as changes within the organization in the offseason. Obviously, you have Chris Albright come in. He hires Pat Noonan. There's been so many different iterations of coach and general manager, sporting director with FC Cincinnati in such a short time. What changes have you seen? What feels different?
I mean, the approach of just leaning on MLS experience has been just, that completely altered things for the club. Chris Albright didn't sign, really flashy players in the offseason, but he definitely raised the floor with his signings, bringing in guys that had experience in the league. And then, of course, Pat Noonan, just his experience. Everyone kind of said he was ready for this head coaching job. And I think he was still people kind of doubted that, but just his flexibility with the roster. They've had a lot of injuries. He's been really just creative in how he's changed formations. He's not, we all thought he wanted to do this 4-4-2 diamond formation and he was going to get set on that. But, he told us in the beginning, no, I'm not set on the formation. We're going to be open to whatever works best. And we've seen him try different combinations, and that's really been key getting through these injury issues that they've had. It's just his flexibility and looking at, how can I use this player while we have John Nelson is our only option at left back. What else can we do? So that's been the big key. And I think the fans really noticed that too. That was something they harped on a lot last year was, the lack of subs and rotation. So, and really, I think that comes down to Pat Noonan understanding the league, understanding the the challenges of the travel and all that, and just the need to rotate players more. So that's been really we've kind of seen it, especially the last couple weeks with all the injuries, but you can kind of see it building early on that way.
Yeah. So one of those signings from within the league, I'm going to put my hand up and offer a mea culpa, is Junior Moreno, who I did not honestly think much of, but he has been a steadying influence throughout the year for this team. And then you add on top of it Obi Nwodo in central midfield next to him. Those two guys against Minnesota, it wasn't perfect, right? And it wasn't quite perfect against Toronto, but through 180 minutes, Cincinnati, with those two guys on the field, are actually difficult to play through. In the first time in their entire MLS existence, if you look at them in central midfield, you're thinking, hey, this is actually pretty good. It is just a shocking turnaround from what we have seen there in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Junior Moreno has been outstanding especially the last few games. And, Obi coming in, I don't think the fans really saw that as this huge signing because, it's kind of a player a lot of people didn't know a lot about. But what he's adding in there is, I mean, it's definitely altering. You look at the last 6 games, they've given up 3 goals if you include the U.S. Open Cup game. So that's, for a team that has given up.
It's a miracle.
Yeah, league record goals the last 2 years, or I guess 2 of the last 3 years. Just seeing the transformation just with those 2 pieces has been incredible. And that's really helped the back line where, people kind of looked at the center backs that they had going into the season, and it was basically the same center back group from the year before. And, just changing things with the defensive midfielders has been so key, and just freeing the back line up to kind of do their thing. And, they're not just leaking opportunities through the middle of the field anymore. So that's been, Junior Moreno, we haven't talked enough. He's so low key, been a big difference maker for this team.
There are at this point a million different directions we could go with this discussion. Like they crushed it in the super draft between Roman Celentano and Ian Murphy and Nick Markanich as well. They have not gotten much from Brenner. They have Lucho Acosta maybe putting in an MVP caliber season. But the question that everybody wants to know is Brandon Vasquez going to be with the U.S. national team later this month? And from your perspective, should he be?
I mean, yeah, he's been outstanding. I think we also have to remember that he could qualify for the Mexican national team. I talked to him about that, and he grew up kind of following the Mexican team more. So that was something to also keep in mind. But obviously the need with the U.S. men's national team is there. And, he's got 6 goals. I just love watching his movement in the box and just the way that he feeds off the other players around him. He still has moments where his finishing is lacking, but then, the next game he's back on the score sheet. So, I think that he's definitely still a player to keep an eye on. And if he keeps up his pace, then there's no reason that he shouldn't get a look. They have those needs at forward, and he's, I think we talked about him whenever I was on last time. He had scored his first 5 goals so quickly. So he hit a little bit of a lull there, and now he's back. So we'll see if he can keep it up.
I saw some interesting threads this morning. Shout out to Carlin Carpenter as well as Paul Tenorio on sort of the comparison between Vasquez and some of the other guys that are rumored to be called in. Would love to see Brandon Vasquez there. We'll see if Greg Berhalter agrees with that one. Laurel Pfahler, thank you so much, Laurel, for coming on. And I love having the good vibes around Cincinnati. Good vibes, a good march, a good stadium, a good team. Wow, it's incredible. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's get to the top 10, folks. From 10 to 1, Nashville at 10. Back home, Austin's at 9, though they're dropping a little bit. Dallas up a spot to 8. New York Red Bulls down 3 spots to 7 because they can't win at home. The Galaxy up a spot. Top 5, New York City FC, Montreal, Seattle, Philadelphia, and LAFC. Let's get to Austin at number 9. Chris Bills is here of the Striker, Texas. Chris, what's up, man? Hit that unmute button and chat with us. Noted Austin FC believer, lover, all the things under the sun. This was disappointing, though. It really was for Austin and for those of us that were thinking, okay, well maybe this is truly a contender here. This isn't them not being a contender, but it's a little bit of a ding on that status.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was certainly one of their worst performances of the year, and to not score a goal at home at Q2 Stadium, where they've been so good. The only time they've been shut out this year, and really a place where they found a lot of joy. They found a lot of early goals, and they gave up an early one in this one. Ethan Finley with a poor pass that found Marky Delgado, and a great strike by him, but Austin just couldn't find the magic that they've had in comebacks on the road against DC United, and most recently against Houston. Just couldn't find that magic, and now they have to go on the road for back-to-back matches against Real Salt Lake and LAFC, and this is where we're going to really find out the character of this team, I think.
So you may have heard that Wiebe and I have had some questions about how good this team is going to be during this 10-game stretch.
That's actually been David Goss. I just want to establish for the record. It's David.
Andrew, I never thought when I was sitting in the press box as a young reporter covering Sporting Kansas City that I'd be having to deal with Andrew Wiebe becoming part of the story on the team that I'd be covering.
I'm not part of the story. I've been dragged in against my will.
just for having opinion. So what is your opinion on what this, well, it's now a 9-game stretch, started with this 1-0 loss. What is your opinion on how, or analysis of how Austin's going to handle it, and where frankly do they need to be better?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and one that I actually spent some time talking with Sean Steffen from American Soccer Analysis about sort of the XG and some of the underlying numbers that I know that you've touched on quite a bit in your columns about Austin FC and the fact that they're overachieving those numbers, and a big part of that, Sebastian Drusi. Right now, he's got 7 goals, of course, atop the Golden Boot race, of course, atop MLS MVP consideration, and just having an outstanding season. But he is finishing above any rate that he's had throughout his career, whether it's with Zenit, with River Plate, really in career form. And if he can keep that going, and I think Austin's got every chance to be in the mix as this year moves forward. There's also, a veteran presence on this team that they didn't have necessarily last year. Guys like Maxi Urruti, Felipe, and Ruben Gabrielson kind of coming in and bringing a more veteran presence and just sort of a lighter vibe into the group. Whether it's in training sessions or in the locker rooms and in tough moments. So those things are all good and point to a team that can weather some of these storms. But this is going to be the toughest stretch of the year, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a drop. I mean, as you guys know, I think every team in this league suffers from a drop of form at one point or another in the year, and it tends to coincide with playing tough opponents and playing on the road. And maybe you don't see all those pieces click into place until the end of the year. But if they are able to weather the storm, they are able to do something like pick up, something like 4 points or even 3 points from these 2 matches against, NRSL and LAFC, then I think you really have to start taking this team seriously. But as Andrew said, losing 1-0 at home to LA Galaxy on national TV, it's a bit of a ding, and I think the players felt that disappointment. I think they almost built that game up maybe too much. Ruben Gabrielson said afterward that he felt like maybe they gave LA Galaxy too much respect. He said somebody in the locker room said the Galaxy, and he wasn't very happy about that. He said we should be, especially at home, we should consider ourselves the favorites in these types of matches. We are the best team on the field, and I think, again, that's the mentality that they have to keep kind of reinforcing, because it certainly wasn't there last year.
So I just want to throw out some numbers for you. You said American Soccer Analysis. You'll get goal differential minus expected goal differential. Basically, how different is it from the models? They're number 1 in MLS with 9.81. Better goal differential than the model would expect. So 21 goals scored for them. It expects them to score about 16. 9 goals allowed. The model will expect about 14 to be allowed. So maybe there's some correction coming. We shall see soon. Two questions. Who needs to pick up slack from Driussi? We know he's special, but other than maybe Diego Fagundes on the provider side, not getting enough production from the other players. And two, and maybe you can just spend the entire time on this if you want to, Danny Pereira, man. He has been a great draft pick, a really, really special young player, and it's been great to see him thrive.
Yeah, he's incredible, isn't he? I mean, just the calm and the presence on the ball, his ability to really just drive through defenses is something that I won't say it's rare in this league, but it's rare from a player coming out of college in his second year who, wasn't even supposed to be the number one draft pick. I think, it's fair to say that he was a bit of a hidden gem that Austin FC was able to swipe up, and his progression has been outstanding. He didn't really think he was a 6 last year, and that was part of, I think, his growing pains is sort of accepting that role that Josh Wolf was trying to put on him, and he's taking it on, man, and he is really, really playing well. You asked about production, and I think right now one person that I'm kind of pointing out, and I wrote about a bit of my takeaways on the Striker Texas from this match was Alex Ring. I mean, he's still doing Alex Ring things. He's still disrupting, being, just the player that we've expected him to be, but he put himself in a different role, or, the team put him in a different role when they gave him a designated player tag and they made him, a box-to-box attacking midfielder. And he's had plenty of opportunities, plenty of moments. I think the fans are starting to get a little bit frustrated when he gets the ball at the top of the box and, maybe makes a bit of a loose pass, or, he does have 3 assists, but he's had several chances to score. He had one at the top of the box in this match that he didn't put on frame. And there's too many of those moments where he could have 2, 3, 4 goals in this season, and they haven't shown up yet. So, if he starts to hit the target and at least test goalkeepers, I think that would be a big step up for Austin, when they're already, I think Diego Fagundes, has been good, not great. Maxi Ruti has been really good, I think. And, he's going to continue to need to produce, but great partnership between him and Driussi that's starting to develop. But if they can just get a little bit more from Alex Ring in that box-to-box role, I think that would be huge.
All right. Austin, this weekend, scrolling at Salt Lake, then it's at LAFC. So 2 big road games for them. Go check out the Striker Texas. I see you in here, Phil West. What's up, man? Thank you, or sorry, or don't do it again for making me the main character of your column. It doesn't work out for all of us. So, all right, let's keep it moving in Texas. A little news on the Texas front for the Dynamo, by the way. Coco Carrasquilla saying on Twitter that he's happy to continue with the Houston Dynamo wearing the orange shirt. So sounds like they got that loan move either extended or permanent. That's good news for Dynamo fans. And we're keeping it in Texas with FC Dallas with the legend Buzz Carrick. Buzz, what's up, man? How's it going? Yeah, we got you going. We're just introducing Twitter Spaces to a number of people today, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you. So many years, so many moments in Dallas. Nobody I go to first. John Arnold, I'm sorry, man. I know we're gonna have lunch tomorrow, but I'll give you a lot of praise over some drinks tomorrow. So tonight in Kansas City, I'm gonna go to the game tonight. That should be fun. But just tell me about where this team is in your mind under Nico Estevez and as a club as well, because there have been some transition moments, whether it be Lucci leaving or the sale of Ricardo Pepi and others. Where is FC Dallas in your mind these days?
Well, when they said at the beginning of the year, when they went with the branding of the new era, they weren't kidding. Part of it, yes, was the coach. Part of it is, yes, the team, but also across the board. They've increased their marketing spend. They've hired new people in new positions to do things that never been before. So really across the entire organization, they've turned a quarter in a positive direction almost universally inside the club. And it's, from a long-term observer of this team, you have to feel good about everything they're doing. And maybe the execution is not 100%, but there's a positivity here, and it's starting to show up in the stands. Now, of course, they don't draw like, your 68,000 in Seattle or anything, but relative to where they've been, things are looking pretty bright. The new coach, his big mantra, his big selling point, his big goal at the start of the season was to go from one of the worst goals against teams in the league last year to one of the best, and they've effectively done that. The early part of the season was on concentration on defense. They've only allowed 7 goals on the year, which I believe is tied for the lowest in the league, certainly tied for lowest in the West for sure. And when you stop that bleeding, it allows you to stay in games and be competitive in games that you might not have been. They have a new mentality on the road. Matt Hedges has talked about it's the best mentality they've had on the road in years. Now, a lot of that mentality is stifling the game and killing the game and limiting the other team to very few opportunities, and then trying to take advantage of that at the end of the game. At home, they're a little more progressive, but if you look at the season as a big picture, you can definitely see a team that concentrated on the defensive stops in the early part of the year, and now they're beginning to transition into offense. They're not creating a whole lot of volume shots, but they're putting some good efficiency in shots, and they've gotten enough goals to get results in some games. The worry will be what happens if Jesus Ferreira starts to dry up, or if that efficiency starts to dry up. And that's where we are here as watching this team is what's the next phase of their progression involving the offense? Where can they go? How good can they make this thing be? Otherwise, I think they're right about where they should be in terms of ability to win games. They can grind out games and get some results that maybe would have gone south in the past. And so you have to feel pretty positive about the upward mobility of this team.
So it seemed to me like we got a part of the answer to the question you asked about, like, what's the next direction for this team to go. We got a part of the answer this weekend in this 2-0 win over Seattle, in that Nico Estevez switched the formation twice, actually, and got, two forwards on. And he's done that a few times this year, but I thought this was the most pronounced, and this was the earliest he did it. For those who don't know, he switched to, I would call it more of a 4-4-1-1 with Ferreira kind of in a free role underneath Franco Jara as a true center forward occupying the center backs. That's actually how Ferreira got his goal. And the other effect was it brought Paxton Pomykal inside and put him in a position to sort of advance the ball more quickly through midfield. And what had been kind of stagnant in the system that we see from Nico Estevez suddenly opened the whole game up. So is that the next step, for one? And for two, how successful is the system that we're seeing from Nico Estevez right now?
Yeah, about a month ago, he and I had a conversation about how teams were starting to figure out them a little bit. And then you had this little bubble of New York and Colorado getting more opportunities on goal than they had liked prior to that. And it's at that point that he began to mix in these alternate formations. The first version of that was sort of this mid-block 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1, depending on how you want to describe it. Sometimes it's Pomykal underneath. Sometimes it's Jesus underneath, depending on who comes in and out of the game. But they've also worked on a variation that's a 3-4-3. They've mixed that in for a good stretch of the game, the last game before they, I think it was after when they brought in Tafari. There's multiple variations. They're probably up to about 4 different formations that we've seen them work on either in training or in a game. And having this flexibility of talent and flexibility of shape and flexibility of tactics allows them to shift gears on a team or react to the other team shifting gears. And it's sort of a micromanagement. This coach micromanages tactics and micromanages personnel and rotations more than I'm used to seeing from coaches around here. The Dallas has a little more depth when you bring in some attacking wingers, and all of a sudden guys that were starters are now, in the rotation but not starting. All of a sudden you have some depth to go some different types of look, and being able to do that and alter the shape and forcing the other team to try to react to what you're doing is certainly something you can use to your benefit as you move forward, when you might run into teams that have no idea what formation you're going to use from game to game. And it's kind of refreshing to have a team that's confident enough in the way the coach wants them to play that they don't have to play just one shape, that they can switch these shapes up and keep everybody on their toes, whether it be a different starting 11 or a different shape 2 or 3 times, as we saw against Seattle the last game.
So we got time for one more question. It's going to be a quick one, and I'm putting you on the spot. Who is the best player on this team?
Oh, goodness. Right now it's Paul Arriola.
Really?
Yeah, his on the field contribution, but also more importantly, his off the field contribution has fundamentally rebuilt this team in terms of the way it feels about itself. His ability to speak both languages, his likability from both Spanish and English speaking players, his ability to communicate the coach's method and style from a coach he knew before to the team. And then you include his on-field presence, which attracts defenders, attracts attentions. It opens up space for Jesus. His assists, he only has a couple, but a lot of times it's his dummies or movement that is opening spaces for other players. So right now, I think he's the most complete top to bottom player on the team and having the largest impact both on and off the field.
Love it. Oh, by the way, Jesus Ferreira passed his father, David Ferreira, the legend, the MVP, in goals, which I thought was one of the best sort of under the radar moments of the weekend. 25 goals now as an MLS career for Jesus, 24 for David in all those wonderful years with FC Dallas. FC Dallas rising all the way up to number 8, just one spot up, but they're in the top 10 solidly now. They're unbeaten in their last 8 MLS matches, 5 wins and 3 draws. Haven't lost since March 5th, and we're always happy to talk to Buzz Carrick Third Degree Net on Twitter. Of course, if you're listening live, you can just jump up there and follow him. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you. And if you're live and want to get the podcast, MLS Today is the feed. Buzz, thank you for getting on Spaces with us. We'll have you again, okay?
Yeah, you're welcome, and thanks for the invitation. It was fun.
And if you're in Kansas City tonight, holler at me in DMs. I'll come find you with my boy, all right?
Okay.
All right, let's keep it moving. Red Bulls at number 7. I'm looking at a photo right now, a screenshot of one Tom Bogert, Tommy Scoops, on the MSG broadcast. And Tom, it delights me. It just delights me in every way. I love to see you shine, is what I'm saying.
That's very kind. I appreciate it, Weeby, because I was, and that completely took the fangs out of it. I was going to make a joke of, hey, man, like, where's my invite to get a beer or whatever? You've said it to every other guest, but you came in with something nice.
Everybody knows. Look, Tom, everybody knows that we joked about it. Would Doyle have been comfortable surrounded by people wanting to talk to him in Seattle? No, but I'm a social butterfly, man. I got to fill up when I get the opportunity. And if you're ever in the same place as me, I will buy you a beer. All right, what
Doyle would have gotten yelled at. So.
Yeah. Well, we got yelled at a little bit too.
But
that's
people
all
people aren't about that life.
That's
people
all. People
aren't about that life. They will absolutely not. They'll ask for an autograph.
I would love to see you. I would love to see you sign an autograph, Doyle. That would make my year. All right, what's up with the home and away splits, Tom, for the Red Bulls? It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it does in the tactical sense, but it also doesn't because they won for years and years and years playing similarly at home.
I don't understand it. Like it's still a small-ish sample size because it's 5 at home and 5 on the road, but it's still pretty mental. Like you said, the best guess that you can come up with is it's, I guess, a little bit easier in terms that it fits the tactics, it fits the ethos when you're playing on the road, when teams have to take the game to you and you can get more opportunities in transition rather than having to break down a team. But like there's been some like really inexplicable moments. You look back to the draw against Columbus that they, were lucky to get a lead and then somehow gave up the lead with 15 seconds left when they had the ball in the corner of the attacking corner. Like there's just some things that are inexplicable. And like Doyle pointing out that like part of it has to come down to forwards aren't finishing, I guess, as well at home, and which is a point. Like Tom Barlow,
right, between what they got in BWP in the past, right? Like, am I stretching too far with that comparison?
No, of course, but then like you also look in if we're going back to that era, like that Sasha Kleshin, that Bradley Wright Phillips, and Dax McCarty, like that's a veteran team. That's a team that was proven winners, and it's a little bit more difficult to do it with young players. I forget what was the quote that he said that the young players need more freedom of the brain is how Gerhard Struber put it this week. So like, I think that's all part of it too. When you run out a young team, you get the inconsistencies, you get these, I guess, little mistakes at home and not being able to kind of see out the game.
So one of the things that Gerhard Struber talked about in the offseason was the need for reinforcements. He's gotten some of those. Luquinhas this year, he's not lit the world on fire, but he's had some nice moments. Ashley Fletcher has not really had any moments yet. Are there more? Well, obviously there's not more reinforcements coming in the short term because the window's closed. But like, do you get the sense that there is much more to come in the summer, for one? And for two, how short is the string on some of the guys who are already there? Because Patrick Klimala, I know he had a nice game last week. He missed this past weekend. He's in health and safety protocols, but he had lost his starting job. And that's your DP center forward, I think second most expensive signing in club history. Like where is Red Bull on their stable of forwards now, and how hard is Struber banging the drum for more reinforcements?
I mean, I'm sure he is. I can't say that, I guess, with inside information, but I'd be pretty surprised if he wasn't. Like, one thing that's fascinating, I think, is Kevin Thelwell, the head of sport, the chief soccer officer, because all these teams have different terms. He was the guy running the show in the front office, and he left for Everton in January. And he was hired when Dennis Hamlet was already at the club and had already kind of been doing that job. So they hired somebody above Dennis Hamlet, and Thelwell's gone. They haven't replaced him. So Dennis Hamlet is the CSO right now. So I don't know how that affected the planning. I don't know how that affects what they're going to do. I still don't know if maybe they're going to bring in another head of sport, as they called it this summer, or if they're not, if Dennis Hamlet kind of got the keys back. So the front office is a little bit in flux. And then it's a good point what you said about talking about leashes and timelines. In the summer, like I know that Christian Cáceres is somebody who has a lot of teams in Europe that like him. He's been here for 4 years. And the idea when he was bought, when he was 18, or when he was brought into this team, was you develop here and then we're going to move you to Europe. And that's kind of been their whole cycle. So who knows what will happen with him this summer. Caden Clark, even though he's not been playing at all, under Gerhard Struber, and not just this season when he's not been available. It's been pretty much for the past year and a half. Like, there's talk that he's probably going to cut his loan short in the summer. So I think it depends on who's going out rather than coming in first.
If the Caden Clark thing happens after they sold him, then had to pay Gam to move up the allocation order to get him back on loan, only not to play him, and then cut the loan short, that might be the worst use of allocation money in MLS history. But I just want to get that out there on the record. Let's switch to U.S. national team stuff real quick. We know Aaron Long is going to be in Nations League camp. Well, we don't know it, but come on, he's going to be in Nations League camp. You are part of the John Tolkien hive. Make the case for John Tolkien deserving a look at left back as Anthony Robinson's backup. Well, I mean, actually, Anthony Robinson's not going to be at this camp. He did his knee, I think, so he has to have some surgery. So he's probably going to have the summer off. So make the case for John Tolkien, because in years past, if we had a 20-year-old left back who was playing as well as Tolkien was, it would have been a no-brainer that he would have been part of the U.S. national team setup.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to disappoint here because, like, I think that he projects to the national team. I think that he should get a look, again, regardless if we're really thinking about putting you in the World Cup pool for right now, or if this is, we're getting data points or getting you in the system before. Like, I think that, like, it's got to be DeJuan Jones who's getting the real first crack at this. Like, left back is so wide open. Like, Bello and Vines haven't claimed that spot behind Anthony Robinson. So, Kevin Paredes, John Tolkien, DeJuan Jones, I would have at the top of that list. So anything can happen in a camp. Maybe he impresses, but I'm sorry to disappoint here as a big of a fan I am as John Tolkien. And while I do think that he really projects this level, maybe right now is a little too quick. And I think that part of it is he fits really perfectly at the Red Bulls. And that is not the same system as a national team play. So, like, I don't think that it's critical of me to say that, like, yeah, maybe not yet.
New Jersey credentials revoked, just gone. You aren't allowed at the shore. It's over for you. Can I ask you a question, Tom? A personal question?
Yeah.
What size like blazer suit jacket do you wear?
Medium? Question mark? I don't
Medium?
wear blazers.
What the
I don't
hell?
wear blazers very often.
Oh my gosh!
I'm wearing
okay.
one. I'm going to the Men in Blazers show tonight. I'm gonna have a blazer on. I'm gonna have to dig it out. I'll let you know if there's dust on it.
I'm over this line of questioning already. Tom, we still love you. Tommy Skips on Twitter. Tom Bogert. Let's keep it rolling here. Let's get to Patrice Bernier of the 4th ranked in these power rankings, Montreal Impact. I'm just going to keep saying it. I have to do it. There's going to be a new logo. Maybe it'll have Impact in it, Patrice. This is wonderful, man. It's a wonderful time. It's like, in Montreal, I'm sure I'm sure the blooms are out. The weather's getting good. Everybody's hitting the streets. They're shaking off the winter doldrums. There's nothing better than summer in Montreal, and summer in Montreal with a good soccer team playing at Stade Saputo. Congratulations, man. This is going to be great.
Yeah, no, as you mentioned it's a great time. It's spring. The weather's actually getting much warmer here. We're looking at, for you guys, it's in the 80s, so the temperatures well. But I think it's a good timing for the club in the whole. As you mentioned it, the new logo will be unveiled sometime this summer. The new president has mentioned that, the word impact is allowed to be used, that the history will be reconnected with what the new name is, the evolution to CF Montreal. And the team is responding well on the field. Now, am I surprised where they are as well as they're doing? Yeah, I'm not going to lie. But were we expecting them to do better in season 2? Yes, because Olivier Renard went to get out some good players, made good acquisitions. They made a great one, I believe, in Kai Kamara, even though it wasn't supposed to happen. It happened, and it shows in the locker room. And Wilfred Nancy, it's been 2 years. He put in a true philosophy and identity and a culture around these players who now believe that it's not just making the playoffs. It's actually also establishing themselves as a good team in the league and a contender, and playing in a way that they all enjoy. And just a matter of fact, there's about 11 or 12 goal scorers for CF Montreal this season, and 5 of them are defenders, which is probably a first in the club's history. So good times to be in Montreal and CF Montreal, and hopefully it lasts till the end of the season, because it's still a marathon. It's 34 games. It's great to the beginning, but it's also how you end.
Patrice, you talked about the team having an identity now. For those who are listening who don't watch a lot of this Montreal side, what is their identity on the field? Are they a ball dominant team? Are they a counterattacking team? Like how would you describe it?
No, I think since last year we've seen Wilfried Nancy ask this team to build out of the back, even in tight situations. And let's not lie, beginning of the season they paid in cash for a lot of those decisions. But he wants them to play out of the back, not only just to play, it's to have the confidence to play under pressure. And so they are a possession type team. I think the good thing which they've progressed this year is they're a bit more vertical, meaning they're quicker to go at the other teams at goal. Before it was a lot of east and west, a lot of possession. Last year, I think they were 5th or 6th in the league, but they weren't creating as many chances as most of the teams who have a lot of possession. While this year, offensively, Georgi Mihailovic is scoring a lot more. His best season in terms of goal tally in the history as he's played in MLS. Passes. You have a lot of people playing. Kyoto is still doing well. We're not talking a lot about him, but he's still producing, and he's not a out-and-out number 9. He's somebody that Thierry Henry developed into becoming a striker. So the good thing is they're attacking a bit more vertical, and also mentally in games where last year, I think 7 games last year, they had taken the first goal, and they only took 1 point, meaning that they came back in one game to draw 1 point. And this year, out of 10 games, I think it's 7 where they take the first goal, and they've come back and either drew or won the game. So it's a sign that the team mentally is a bit stronger than last year, and probably right now believing that they can do much greater things that they probably expected them to, they projected for themselves at the beginning of the season.
They're beating my projections for them from the beginning of the season. One of the things you mentioned was that determination to build from the back. And a big key for this, a guy who was kind of under the radar, I think, for most folks, is Joel Waterman. His passing ability from the back, his ball carrying ability, he breaks lines, he gets the midfield on the ball in good spots. And he's a guy who came from the CPL a couple of years ago. I think he had a little bit of adjustment to MLS last year, but he has been absolutely fantastic this year. And so all the conversations around Montreal with regards to national team players it feels like anyway, has been like, is Georgi Mihailovic going to get a call up for the U.S. national team? Given how good Joel Waterman has been and Canada's need at center, like, shouldn't we be asking about Joel Waterman getting a look for Canada this month and next month in the Nations League, because he's been absolutely fantastic?
Yeah, definitely. We've heard John Herdman say, like, in June, the friendly games, the nation leagues, they'll be trying out probably some players, trying out some new tactics. And why not Joel Waterman? Because you mentioned it. His passing ability, that's probably one of the things I think Olivier Renard saw in him. I know when I was in the staff, you could see he was comfortable on the ball. Even if I'm correct, he played somewhat in college. He was a center mid, a defensive mid who turned into a center back. The adjustment was, can he adjust to the game speed that MLS is compared to CPL? And it was the tough times in the first year. Even last year, the critics were out there saying, is he the right man for the job? But he ended up having 22 games. And this year, most people thought it was going to be Johnston, Camacho, and Miller as the pairing of 3 at the back. And Wilfried Nancy said, no, I have confidence in Joel Waterman. And you've seen game in, game out, maybe Camacho has a little bit more headlines or Miller because they score some goals. But now Waterman is tallying his fair share. And definitely in terms of the national pool, center back in Canada, there was a time there was not enough forwards, not enough guys who could make the difference up front, and a lot of guys at the back were in the center of the park and midfield. But now it seems Steven Vuittora is not that young. So is there some fresh blood that will be able to come in right now and maybe there for the future of this national team? Because we have Kamal Miller on the left. He's a mainstay. And Johnson, we know he can play in the center back pairing. But definitely Waterman, I guess he's on the radar. It would be interesting to see in the June camp if he's invited to be part of this new group and this new wave, and also have the reward of his performances as of late. So will be interesting to see the group selection for the June camp that John Herman has for the game that I think they're playing in Vancouver for a game, and then they have Nations League.
Patrice, one more for you. It's like a tradition at this point. Mason Toye update, please.
Mason Toye, pardon, has been training on his own. I assume that by this month, with the great results, but he should be slowly incorporating the team. Luckily, there'll be for him, I guess, international break early June. So I assume that in June we could see him back with the whole group and probably given the green light to be part of the team. So that's also something positive to look forward to, because if there's no new forward to be coming in terms of the transfer window, Mason Toye is definitely an addition to this team that most people will have to pay attention to. Or if people are not scoring, I'm pretty sure he'll be hungry to be part of this newfound youth and winning series, or at least undefeated series that they have. So I'm assuming in the next few weeks we should hear a bit more about Mason Toye being back with the group, and question of time between in June that he's part of the group and has his first few minutes sometime for June or a half season.
So 3 losses to start the season, 5 wins and 2 draws since. Montreal 3rd in the Eastern Conference, 4th in these power rankings. Patrice Bernier, number 1 in our hearts. And also, yes. Patrice, I can't help but notice that you have your own logo now. Can you just tell me about the logo? You have a Patrice Bernier logo, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, no, this is the logo for my 5th edition. Every year since my last season, I try to have an event so that we can raise funds for kids to be able to kids that are in impoverished areas that don't have access to sport. So Patrice Bernier and Friends is the main event. Hey, who knows? Maybe I'll invite you guys, some MLS guys. We had Dwayne the first year, Dwayne De Rosario. So this was our 5th edition, and I'm happy now that I have my own foundation that the event joins in, and that I'll be able, and the foundation will be able, especially to help out a lot of kids stay active, because we know the last 2 years, I don't know how it is in the States, but a lot of kids have left sports for tablets and other stuff. But I'm going to try to find a way to get them back into playing soccer and moving. And we all know the benefits of being in the social surroundings that sports can give. So that's what's led to the logo that you see is Patrice Bernier, but it's for an event called Patrice Bernier and Friends, which was the 5th edition on the April 24th of last.
I am definitely a friend of Patrice Bernier. If you want to extend the invite, Patrice, I'm coming to Montreal, man.
No problem. We'll be ready for you. Be ready
we'll
next
there and move. I'll strap these ankle braces
next winter,
up, man.
fall.
All right.
Next winter, spring.
All right. So you know how to get at me. Hit me up on WhatsApp. Thanks, Patrice. Always glad to have your time, man.
My pleasure, guys. All the best.
All right, let's finish off with Steve Zakawani, who somehow I missed in Seattle in what was an incredible week. They went to Dallas, Steve, and the result is what it is. These are the CONCACAF Champions League champions. It doesn't matter that they're tied for the Supporters Shield, right?
It doesn't matter, man. And to be fair, that Dallas game, we knew we were going to lose before the game even began. I'll be honest.
So I have not talked to you. I wasn't able to see you in Seattle. I was heartbroken. So tell me how you experienced the CONCACAF Champions League final.
It's insane. So I was supposed to be there. And then, something came up personally that I had to attend to, and I couldn't get back to the stadium in time. So I ended up watching the game after it happened. So it's the hardest thing for me, avoiding Twitter, avoiding texts, avoiding my phone. I watched it probably...
You didn't know. You managed to do it.
How
is it? Because people had to have been blowing you up, man.
Blowing me up, closed the blinds. I didn't want to see any fireworks in case anyone was celebrating. So I just was in my own world. I had a nice little drink, lemonade, of course, and watched the game. And I celebrate in real time. I could feel the atmosphere through the TV. And then once, I think the second goal from Raul went in, I knew that they'd won. Then I took my phone out and started checking, and I knew it was 3-0. And so I was on a bit of a delay, but what a historic day for the club.
It was amazing. And I will say the most amazing thing for me experiencing it, I didn't get to go. So I watched it from a continent away. I watched it in real time, so I didn't have to avoid spoilers. But I was never actually nervous. I was never actually nervous, and I think that says a lot about what has been built in Seattle. Because I think with any other team in this league, we all would have been waiting for the other shoe to drop. But with Seattle, even after JP went down, and we'll get to that in a minute, we'll talk about how they're going to replace JP. I was never nervous that Seattle was going to get it done, and like that. Can you talk to that about like what this group has in them that sort of radiates from them in these big situations?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I mean, I don't think I was nervous because I think, I've played in those games. I've been away to Santos Laguna. I've played not even just the Mexican teams. All those CONCACAF Champions League games, away games are so tough. But I've always felt even the very best Mexican teams, when they would come here to the States, there was always a chance. We might lose 6-1 over there or 4-0, but we might get a 1-1 tie here. We might win 2-1. So once I saw the 2-2 happen in Mexico, I felt if you give the Sounders just one game to win at home, if there's one team I put my money on in this country, it's going to be the Sounders. And I think we've played probably 4 finals at home, 2 Open Cups. We've played the MLS Cup 2019, of course, and now this one. And each time the fans have risen to the occasion, and so has the team. And this particular Sounders team, Nico, Raul, JP, Yema, the quality, the experience, they've been there. Stephen Fry in the goal as well. Even Jordan and Christian, I still look at them as young players, but they're here. They have multiple championships now. It's a team that is built to win, and a one-off game against Pumas at home. I thought Seattle was the better team anyway. And as long as they didn't allow the nerves to get to them, which I didn't think they did, sensing it from speaking to Schmetz, in the build up to the game, I felt very confident like you. And I think this team it's built to win. It's a championship caliber team. It's a team that's been in finals. They know what to do when they get there, especially here. And also, not taking anything away from the Sounders, I didn't think Pumas was the very best Mexican team I've ever seen. So I also felt that once we got back here, just get the job done, guys. That's all I was thinking. But I'm glad it worked out. But it went pretty much as I expected.
It's going to take some work to qualify for the next CCL. They'll be in the Leagues Cup. We know that in 2023. But 7 points here. They got some games in hand, Steve. The hangover has worn off, I hope. And if it hasn't, it's deserved as well for the Sounders. Now what? How do you drag yourself up the standings? How do you make sure this playoff streak doesn't die? For what it's worth, I don't think it will, but it is going to take some work. It's not just going to be like snap your fingers and you're there.
The season begins this weekend, essentially. So I think the team, they won't say this, but it's been not one eye, but 2 eyes on CCL, and they got it done. Achieved the goal. That now goes on the back burner for the FIFA Club World Cup. We'll get to that when we do. The real MLS season, it begins this weekend, and listen, this last season, Raul missed a ton of games. Nico missed a ton of games. There was no Jordan Morris, for example. And these guys are here. So if you needed a team to go on a run, look no further than the Sounders. Have had to do it before, and I've done it before from even further back at times, it seems like. So listen, games in hand mean nothing until you actually get the points on the board. But no one here is worried because there's too much quality. Obviously, losing João Paulo for the season is huge, but there is a lot of quality here, and I just don't see this kind of form continuing. I think the league knows that, and lost to Dallas at the weekend, no problem. But I think if that was a Sounders full team and everyone was there and playing, I don't think they lose that game. So I think that confidence is in the squad, but you have to go out on the pitch and show it. I just feel confident because this is as healthy as the team can hope to be, JP aside, compared to this time last season. Hardly anybody was there. So it will be okay.
Yeah, it'll be okay, but JP is still a big loss. Now, we've seen Obed Vargas come through in big moments throughout this season, including in the CCL final in the second leg coming on for JP. Josh Atencio, just 20 years old, but he played almost 2,000 minutes for a very good team last year. They have Danny Leyva in that pipeline as well. And, of course, both Albert Rusnak and Kellen Rowe and Christian Roldan, they can all play deep-lying central midfield. None of them is exactly JP, but all of them can play that spot. Do you think that first crack at replacing him is going to be Vargas and Atencio, and then, if necessary, a move gets made to bring in a veteran replacement this summer? Or do you think no matter what happens, there's going to be a veteran brought in to play JP's role this summer?
No, Craig Wiebe and Garth Lagway, you got to be on the phone right now with all the scouts. And you got to bring someone in, because I'll say this. Atencio, Vargas in particular, he's impressed me the most. We had Danny Leva a couple years ago, all good players. Vargas is the one most ready to step in and play a full season at a high level, I think. But I always view it this way. These guys can get you through most of the regular season. It's when you come up in some of those really big games, in those really big playoff games where the likes of a JP and before him, of course, Osvaldo Alonso, they make a difference. And so without question, the ideal scenario is you bring in somebody to fill those shoes that JP is going to leave. Because the obvious option maybe is you move Christian Roldan back a line, but he's been so good on the right. For so long, we asked what's his best position. In this particular team, I think we found it. In that 4-2-3-1, put him on the right in front of his brother. They've got a crazy understanding. He knows when to come inside. He's so good tactically. He also can get back and track back when he needs to. But I think he gives you so much on the right with his off-the-ball running. Moving him back to the center, I don't think is the right move. So I think due to that, you have to sign someone. But Vargas and Atencio and Christian at times, alongside Rusnak, they can get you through most games. Just not if you want to win MLS Cup. I think you have to replace João Paulo, man. I just don't see it because when you're going up against, let's say, Carlos Hill or Carlos Vela, some of these top players, I always knew when we had Alonso next to us that he's going to do a good job shutting down the other team's best player. Us attacking guys just got to be on our game today. But if Ozzy wasn't there, it was such a big gap, and we were exposed and exploited anytime he wasn't there in a big game. I think it'll be the same without JP.
Who are the top 3 Sounders players of all time, Steve? And I ask you this because on the post-game show we did, Garth Lagerwey said with a lot of enthusiasm that it was undoubtedly Nico number 1, and I tend to agree with him there, but I'm curious what your opinion is, top 3.
It's so hard to answer because I know what Garth's saying and it makes sense. I'll say this. There's definitely a before and after in terms of Nico Lodeiro at this franchise. We were successful before he came. We've been uber successful since he's come. He's changed the direction of this franchise and made them champions now. I've never seen a player like him, the way he trains. I mean, you can ask the guys the stories. I mean, he's not your typical sort of DP in a sense where you won't think because he's the hardest worker. So yes, in that sense, if you're going on pure talent, I don't know that I've ever seen a player anywhere near the level that I saw when I played alongside Obafemi Martins. They just wasn't. I mean, they just isn't. I mean, I love Nico. I love Raul. The stuff Oba did for about 2 years here, I mean, we've never seen anything like it. I mean, you went to the stadium every week or to training knowing you're going to see something you haven't seen. I mean, the stuff he did almost by himself, and then you added Clint Dempsey next to him, it was a different level. So I have a hard time in terms of overall talent going away from him, and then Osvaldo Alonso as well, because the longevity and just how important he was. But it's difficult to argue against Nico just because since he came, what he's done, what the team's been able to do, I don't think anyone else has had that kind of impact. So I would agree with Garth in that sense.
All right, Club World Cup comes next for Seattle. We'll finish on that. How much are you looking forward to that? How much does it matter? How much do you think the Sounders will put into it? Will it just be a celebration or will they take it seriously?
No, you got to take it seriously. You have to, because the way I look at it is we've played teams of that caliber before, but they were on vacation. I played against Barcelona, Chelsea, Boca Juniors, all these teams, but they were here on vacation, and they might play Messi for 30 minutes or 45 minutes and things of that nature. You're playing them in a game that matters. They want to win. Those teams in Europe as well, they want to win the FIFA Club World Cup. They don't want to lose to an MLS team. So if you do get a chance to get to the final where you'll probably face either Liverpool or Real Madrid, you've got to take it seriously, because in those preseason games, it's always weird because you don't want to tackle them. Like, I don't want to be the reason why I injure, Iniesta and he's out for the season. I don't want to do that, So it's like you're playing them in preseason, you're kind of careful. Now it's a real game. The brakes are off. You're going toe-to-toe. Let's see. They're the best teams in the world. Let's now see exactly where we stack up. And I think it's exciting for the Nikos, the Raul, Christian, Jordan to test themselves against the very, very best players. And you only get the opportunity once in a career or so at times. And this is going to be great for the guys. So I think the club will take it very, very seriously. And we're already looking forward to it here in Seattle. I can tell you that.
All right. Well, we'll have to wait for that, but in the meantime, got to make the playoffs. Seattle Sounders dragging themselves out of last place in the West, but they're doing it with rings, with a title nobody else can claim. Steve Zakuani. How was kickboxing this morning, Steve? Doyle bet me $5. I wouldn't ask you about it.
I'm glad you asked. It was always a great session.
There you go. There you have it. That's the Power Ranking Show. Thank you, Steve. Thanks to all of our guests on this show. Let's see. Michael Singh for Toronto, Eric Krakauer on Charlotte, Jeff Rueter on Minnesota, Felipe Cardenas on Atlanta, Laurel Pfahler on FC Cincinnati, Chris Bills on Austin, Buzz Carrick on Dallas, Tom Bogert on the Red Bulls, and Patrice Bernier and Steve Zakwani finishes off on Montreal and Seattle. Actually, I think I owe you $5. Is that right, Doyle? You said you give me.
Yeah, we're even for the show.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That's it for the Power Ranking Show. Remember, go subscribe if you're still listening live to the podcast feed, MLS Today. And go check out Extra Time for Monday, the Week 10 wrap. It was a lot of fun. We'll be back on Thursday with Jesus Ferreira. Should be a good interview. Adios, everybody. Have a good Tuesday.